Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
You're not able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay.
You should start soon.
I think you have to let in those participants. Sir, some of them are saying they're waiting. Okay.
I think they automatically enter, so it should be fine.
Okay. Okay.
Right, I think we can go ahead. Good evening, and welcome to today's webinar on mediation empowering women. My name is Ramya, and I'm an advocate and a very young mediator, and I take great pleasure to be your host for this evening. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening, Ms. Uma Ramanathan. Ms. Uma Ramanathan is a graduate in English literature and law, and she has practiced in the High Court of Madras for nearly 30 years. Ever since training in 2006 as a mediator and 2007 as a mediator trainer, she has been passionately involved in mediation and has trained mediators as well as mentored them all over the country. She is the coordinator of the Tamil Nadu Mediation and Conciliation Center, High Court of Madras, and the founder, trustee, and managing trustee of the Foundation for Comprehensive Dispute Resolution. In addition to this, she's the author of the book Resolve to Resolve. She's also a very firm believer in philosophy as the way to understand thought process. We are delighted to have you as our speaker for this evening, madam. I'd like you to begin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ramya. It's a privilege for me to talk today on this topic, mainly because I remember when BIMAC was inaugurated, this building was opened by Justice Siriak Joseph. And I was in Bangalore on that day, and Mr. Thiruvengadam had invited me to come there, and I had gone there. And I remember fondly about how the whole thing was so exciting, and you're starting the whole thing as a mediation center. And it's nice to be part of this program now to see how you people have grown. So really, congratulations to Mr. Thiruvengadam first, and then I want to thank him for allowing me to be part of your process of learning. When this topic of women empowerment was suggested, I was wondering, why do people think that, like gynecologists, only women will be in family courts, or only women should talk about women empowerment? And I was asking him whether I can talk on something else. And then we went back and forth and finally agreed. Mainly because I started reading, and I have to thank him for that, because once this topic was given and I started reading up, I found a lot of material on the negotiation power of women, and I understood that there's a totally different perspective about how women negotiate. So I must thank him first for helping me to learn this. As I said, I normally look back into what kind of cultural background or what kind of ethos we have. And when I was thinking about that, I thought about the word Shakti. And because this is something that we associate with the Hindu goddess, at least. Okay. So I was wondering, what does the word Shakti mean? So when I was going through that, I found that in the Indian concept itself, the woman, at least in the Hindu concept, the woman is understood as half of the male. So that's why we have Ardhanarishwara. So what is understood is that she's part. And even for the Christians, Eve was made out of a rib taken out from Adam. So where did we get lost after that? That was my thought. So we seem to have had a great part, because in the Hindu, many of the traditions, unless the wife is there, the man cannot do certain religious or charitable duties, which is part of his learning. So then where did we get lost was what I was wondering. So I went to look at the word Shakti, and I found the Shakti itself, the word connotes three different facets. One is creation. One is, when we say creation, it is the ability, whatever is the potential that this person has. I'm not talking about men or women here. I'm just talking about Shakti as a word. Now, Shakti's one facet is creation. That is the potential, the ability to do something. So every person has that ability. Whether we are able to express it, whether we find that potential, whether we are able to recognize it, whether we make use of it is the next thing. The next one, the other facet is the maintenance, because once we have the ability, then we must do something about it. So do we do something about it? Is this power, is this energy being used to do something? Does it get a manifestation anywhere? What is happening to this potential? And the last is what is generally attributed to Shiva as the person who destroys everything. But it is really action, because once there is a potential and it finds a sort of frame to do something, then it has to manifest as some action. So a woman already has it as Shakti. She already possesses all this: creation, maintenance, and destruction. So when the potential is there, now why have we not understood where we are going? So when I was looking at it, I was wondering, we claim rights, we say I am entitled to certain thing, but I'm not able to get it. So how? Because I find there is a disconnect between knowing something and being able to access to it. So some of the people may think that I have this right. I have a right to property. I have a right to maintenance from my husband. I have a right to a lucrative employment. So many things. I may know that. I may not know the statute as such, but I may know that I have something. But whether I'm able to transform it into some action, which will be that potential into something positive for me. So is there a possibility for access? So when that came in, I started understanding that this whole Shakti is actually a power. Now, what is this power? This power could be a belief system, because from childhood, the woman is taught to say that you have to give up, you have to give in, you have to compromise, you have to adjust. And the man is always said that he can get away with a lot of things. That is a general attitude. So the belief is that even if the woman is acceding to it, she believes that is the right thing to do. So there is a belief system. There is a personality side to it also. Because once the person is brought up in this particular kind of socio-cultural milieu, then that person gets a personality, whether it is male or female. And they think that this belief system is the right and they can enforce that right. Now, how does it affect the gender? Everywhere, it is a patriarchal society. Whatever happens around the world, it's a patriarchal society. In fact, even mediation there is an attribution that it is a patriarchal model, and so there is a lot of enforcement of certain demands of the other person on the woman. And so whether woman gets a good deal in mediation is the biggest debate going on today. So what is this that makes this individual power? So the word empowerment itself talks about power. It has the word power inside it. Now, what does it say? Now, Sheena Iyengar, she's a visually challenged person, and she does a lot of research on choice, because in every aspect of life, we have a choice about doing something. And she has done research on choice, and she says choice is understanding the control that one person has, understanding the beliefs and the ideas that are there, and understanding what they can take control of. And it is especially relevant to women, because most of the time women think that they do not have control over the situation. That is because most of the time there is no confidence in their ability. They are not able to understand what are the possibilities there. The next is, even in a negotiation, if you see, especially in matrimonial matters, when they come into the matrimonial and they say, okay, this is going to go on forever, I will give up. Or he's been abusing me so much, so I don't want to fight over this for long. I just want to get away. It may be a raw deal, but they may think of more of how to get away from the situation. So what is called now in negotiation is there's a shadow in when a woman negotiates. One is thinking this is an awful situation. Now I have to get out of it, so I don't mind giving up anything. So what happens is they are not able to understand the real bargaining range. They may be entitled to something more. If they talk a little more, they may be able to get something more, but they don't understand that they can do that. Basically, that is because a woman is naturally accommodating. So what they call as the three A's is one is awfulizing, the second is accommodating. Why is the person accommodating? Because there is a sort of social image created and they want to fit into that social image. They want to be known as a person who is very fair. So what happens is when people around you, sometimes even the mediator, which is not right, but even the mediator comes to say, okay, what are you going to get out of this? So then they start thinking about, why don't I accommodate? I will accept something less and I will go away. See, for example, in a particular issue where it was who was going to be the department head in a university, and there was a complaint of a sexual harassment being given, and because it has a conciliation clause, I was asked to mediate to ask them how this has happened or what could be done about it. And ultimately, I found it was not really a question of sexual harassment. It was because they came from different social backgrounds, and the man had a way of talking which she couldn't understand. But ultimately, it was because both of them were fighting for the post of the head of the department. So what happened was, when this went on for some time, she was told that, okay, you wait for 1 more year, then we will find a position from him elsewhere, then you can take over. And she gave in. Because her whole life was based on this career, and she felt that it was not worth fighting for after that. So sometimes they accommodate because of that. Sometimes it is avoiding also. So first is awfulization, second is accommodation, third is avoidance. Avoidance comes in because mainly the gender difference between men and women is that men look at it from the point of rights. What are you entitled to? What is just? What would the courts grant? Or what can, what is the accepted norm? Something like that. Whereas a woman looks at it from the point of relational, from care. Now, how do I mend this relationship? How do I adjust it? So because of this, for a long time, the woman also puts up with a lot of problems there. So this is why in mediation, it is said that sometimes there is a risk of the woman getting into a lesser, value than what she would be entitled to. Mainly because one is that her survival is important there. Whether she wants peace, whether she wants a certain resources, whether she wants a house, whether she wants something else. So because of that, she may give up certain things. The second question is obligations. Now, what are obligations? Obligations are because the family sometimes. They may feel, okay, those are elderly people. Why do you want to fight with them? Why don't you give it up? Your brother has done so much for you. So why are you asking for a share of the property? Sometimes it may be principles also, because principles are, again, when you are in an office environment and there is a certain norms of behavior there, and you understand that a woman doesn't easily get a promotion or she doesn't get an equal salary there, then also you tend to accept something which is offered and you think, okay, this is better than what I had, so I'll be able to do it. So the whole thing is based on vulnerability of the woman. Now, how do we understand this vulnerability of the woman? Again, it is based on the power. And Max Weber has something nice to, very succinctly he puts it. He says, power is the ability of an individual. Power is the ability of an individual in a social relationship to affect the actions and ideas of others despite resistance. So what happens in a negotiation or in a mediation when a woman is coming in is that she knows that the husband or the superior or whoever is the opposite party is not going to accept her claim. She comes with a claim basing a value on that. And even when she comes in with the claim, she is prepared to give up. Now, why is she prepared to do it? Because generally her attitude itself may be like that. She wants to avoid a confrontation because conflict itself is looked at as a confrontation. So they don't want to have hard feelings. So sometimes they may give up because of that. The second factor is because you're used to a certain authority, either because the elders in the family. I remember a woman who came to me for filing a divorce petition. after about 28 years of marriage, and the marriage was not consummated, from day one, she knew that the husband was not holding the post that he is supposed to have said. He was not educated. It was an arranged marriage. She was a headmistress of a school, and she found that he had some health issues also, so she could not live with him. So from day one, she had not lived with him. So when I asked her, why did you wait for all this time? And then she said, it was my grandparents who arranged my marriage. So I could not hurt them. I had to wait for my grandparents to pass away. And her grandmother had passed away just a month before that. She called her brother from Dubai, asked him to help her to find an advocate to file a petition for divorce. And for 28 years, both of them had not lived together. So this is because she was so used to accepting the demands or the principles that was laid down by the family. There are so many women who are doctors who come and say, no, I know my husband is doing this, but it is because he's influenced by the family. If he changes, I will go and live with him, but I will not agree for a divorce. Now, why are they doing that? Because they are used to doing this, or they believe there is a legitimacy. They don't want to be held as being guilty of having committed a wrong. One is they believe this relationship demands that they act in a particular way. The other is they believe that by obeying, they belong to a moral order. Three is that they believe that they have not done anything wrong, so why should they be punished? So what happens is this power which they have, the potential that they have, is not able to come out to the maintenance stage at all, because they don't understand that they need not look at it from the frame of what the society is supposed to be looking at them. They already have a conception of what they are. They have a conception of what the social values demand. They have a conception of how they think that the society is looking at them. So then they start reacting only to that conception of what they think that the society is thinking. It may not be even what the society is thinking, but that is how they start reacting. And so they think there is a legitimacy to it. And what happens is sometimes, even if you see domestic violence, a person who has been regularly been physically abused. I remember a friend of my mother's, she's now in an old age home. As a young child, I have seen her husband hitting her, and I used to wonder, why is this man doing it? And now they are in an old age home. The other day when I was talking to her and I was asking, how is uncle? She said, oh, he's the usual type. He goes on hitting me. So I asked her why. She said, yeah, that is his way. I've accepted it. So her children are all grown up. They are all abroad. Everyone is fine. But nobody has done anything, or he has not changed, or she has not questioned it also. So somewhere along the line, this power is, this Shakti that she has not been realized at all, because she has voluntarily accepted that this is how the world is going to be. Now, unless I realize that I have this potential to change something, I'm not going to change it. So the first thing is recognition of this potential, that I have the ability to do something. And that will be supported by not just mere education, but life skills. I need to know how to interact with other people. I need to know how to put what I won't even say needs, but what are my desires, or what I would like to be there in that space where I'm living with another person, be it with my parents, be it with my spouse, be it in an employment state, anywhere. I need to define what is the boundary and what is a space and what is a kind of space that I want there. I need to know that I can breathe freely. But that is not possible until I recognize that I have the potential. So that can come in only when I realize that there are two things. One is that there are specific power dynamics. The second is there are relationship dynamics. Now, what is a power dynamic? A power dynamic is when I have eloquence, when I have negotiation skills, when I understand what is a reward power. It is not that, okay, in a custody matter, what happens? Most of the time, the woman thinks that she has to take care of the children, and for the sake of the children, she would do anything. Why? She can tell him, you can take care of the children. But a woman never does that, because once, she doesn't trust him. Second, he is not prepared to take the responsibility. So she feels that she is burdened with it, and she hates herself for that, but she still continues to bear the cross. So the general impression is that men are independent. They are able to think about what they want, express what they want, and get what they want. But women are interdependent. They need to be, they need some kind of acknowledgement. They need some kind of affirmation from the other person to say that this is what is right. So when children become a priority, their relationship dynamics comes into play. When this guilt comes in, as I said, many times a woman would say, oh, he beat me because I didn't cook properly. He doesn't like the food that I cook. He does not like how his mother used to cook. Or in an office where the woman says, yeah, my superior doesn't explain how I have to do it. But when I do something, he always finds fault because I'm a woman. And he tends to tell the other person who's a male to take it over. So I'm always living under the tension that I may not be able to complete it in time and I may be found fault with. So even in a working atmosphere, what happens is a woman is constantly looking over her shoulder for some affirmation, for some acceptance. Again, because her self-esteem is not positive, she hasn't understood. So this authority and power, if we look at it, because those are the main factors that make you understand the potential. Now, power is first basically due to the personality. It could be because of the socio-cultural background from which this woman comes, how she has been conditioned to think, and as she grows up in her life, her own individual demands and her own individual ideas, how they are allowed to shape. So her personality is something, it could be an avoidance personality also because of the negative things going on around her, or it could be a very positive where she becomes very dominant, which is also not right because she will not be able to listen to the other person. And this personality is connected to the character traits of this person because that is part of the individual itself. Both these factors will help her to understand or cognize the situation. So the cognitive style is totally could be totally different from each person. Although two sisters are brought up in the same house, they may have different attitudes to marriage, different attitudes to working. There was this woman who had very good qualifications. She had studied, she had got married, she had a child, and then she refused to go to work. So when she was asked, she said, no, because my parents asked me to go do all this, I went, but I was not interested in studies at all. Now, what do you want to do? I don't want to do anything. I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I just want to draw, and my husband doesn't support that, so I wanted divorce. So it was as simple as that for her. So the cognitive style also differs. Whereas her sister, who did not have that kind of an opportunity to study, was in a job which had very long hours, and she was working because she believed that she had to contribute to her family. But she had a different set of problems. So this power this power that is potential there is based on personality, it is based on character traits, and it is based on the cognitive style. Ultimately, it is the knowledge that this person has. And as I said, knowledge is not just education, it is about the life skills, the kind of interactions that this person is able to handle. So generally what happens is, if we see in a negotiation, when a woman comes into negotiation, because she's equating the conflict with the confrontation, she is coming into mediation with a feeling that she will have to defend herself. Why she walked out of the house. Now, in a particular mediation where this woman was very well employed in a bank, and she had filed for divorce very much later in life when her daughter was in college and her son was finishing school, and there were disputes about the property that had bought, and because she was a bank officer, loans had been taken for her husband's business which was not repaid, so there were a lot of issues in that. And so when we started talking, she said she wanted that house that they were living in, where he was living and she had moved out, mainly because her mother had given her the money and part of the payment had been paid. Her share of the buying for the property had been paid by her mother. And she had also taken a lot of loans from the bank for his business. So she wanted that to be repaid. And those were the issues that they were talking. So when we went a little deeper, I found the issue was more than that. He had some kind of a psychosis after a particular brain tumor which was operated, and he had been having a lot of extramarital affairs. And when I said I would like to talk to the daughter, and the daughter just spoke to me, I found that both the children, the son and daughter, had been sexually abused by the father repeatedly. One is physically also, the other is by showing them pornography and talking to them all that stuff. So when I asked her, what is this your daughter is saying? She said, yeah, my daughter has told me, and she was suicidal. So I've taken her to a psychiatrist also. But what can I do? I need to recover this money from him So if I openly confront him, I can't do anything. See, she went to the extent of padding up her daughter's room, ensuring that the daughter got treatment, but she was not prepared to confront her husband or her in-laws about this situation or do anything for that, merely because her priorities were this. And she was made to believe initially that because she had married this person, she had to put up with him. Because she was married, she had to take the loans. Because she was in this situation, she had to see that she could recover as much as possible. So when she came into that mediation, she was saying, I want this only. I mean, it was only in terms of that money and that property. But she didn't understand that she needed something more, that she needed to protect her child. She needed to find out how this man can be brought around to do something for the children. Because at that point of time, with her money going for all the payments for the loans, she didn't have money to even educate her children. So when we are talking about empowerment, it is not just about a woman being able to walk out of the house or a woman being able to stand up and talk. It is about the woman first finding herself, finding uh, how she can operate within that particular social milieu and how she can find out how she can take care of things. The first barrier that I see in this is that there are stereotypes that are attributed to women and men, both. Now, what happens is women also fall under those stereotypes. Unfortunately, even women, other women in the family tend to tell them, oh, this is how a woman will have to take it. Why are you making such a hue and cry about this? I remember there was a woman who came to me. She was in a very high position, but unfortunately, and she was from a very rich family, very endowed. Like the family had a very good business, and her two children were abroad studying even for graduation, and her husband believed only in traveling in business class. That kind of a lifestyle they were leading. She had her own car, her house, everything. But she came saying, I cannot tolerate anything. So I asked her what happened. Then she said, from day one of the marriage, she apparently had very long, thick hair. And from day one of the marriage, the husband used to take her to the parlor, and he used to ask the beautician there to cut the hair in a particular style that he wanted. And he would watch the person do that. And she says that that was the only way he could get aroused. So the whole thing, when she was being taken to the parlor, she knows that he wants to have kinky sex, and that's how he's doing it. She would go there, she'd be brought back, and then he would have his way. And she felt so defiled about the whole thing. So when she spoke about this to the family didn't understand it at all. This is something called a fetish in psychology, but many people don't understand. And everybody told her, what? He's giving you such a good lifestyle. You have servants, you have Audi, you have this, you have that. Now, why are you complaining? So it came to a point when her children were abroad and she said, no, I'm not able to because he started doing this so often and I don't want this anymore. And I'm living a false life. I want to get out of it. But until then, the stereotype was that a woman who has everything can adjust to it. She can be there. The second barrier is also individual goals. Now, what happens is when there is a breakup of a relationship, be it an employment dispute or be it a domestic relationship, the person who first says, I want to end this relationship, the other person then says, no, why? What have I done wrong? So if the man asks for a divorce, the woman says, I am not being guilty of anything. If the woman says, I want the divorce, the man is not prepared to let her go. In an employment dispute also, when the employer says, no, you have not done this properly, so the woman says, no, I am qualified. No, why are you finding fault with me? You're looking at it because I'm a woman. Now, if the same thing happens to the other side, a man telling a woman, you're a superior, but because you're a woman, you're making me work longer hours. So lot of things go on because each one has a particular goal and a perception of how the other person has to behave. So there are expectations mainly based on identity. So unless we understand that, we have to have a sort of a social learning for this. First is we have to understand the behavior potential. What is the behavior potential? We have to understand that in this situation, this is the kind of approach that a person will have. This could be the possible offers that are made. The second is expectancy. The first is what is the potential in the behavior. The second is the expectancy that if this happens, the other person will say this. So when the woman comes into negotiation, be it an employment dispute, she has to say, okay, she has to think of this, that my superior is going to take this attitude when I ask for this salary. If I'm going to say I can work only 5 days a week instead of 6 days a week, my superior is going to say this. So this, because I understand from how the company works or how the superior works, this is how it will happen. So first, the behavior pattern is understood. The second is the expectancy. Okay, if I say this, I know how this person will respond. So I have to be ready for that. I don't look at it as if it is coming out of the blue. And then when I ask for a higher salary, when I ask for a different kind of working hours, when I ask for maintenance, when I ask for child support, what I should know is whether it is possible to get that outcome. See, if one of the co-employees doing the same job is paid something more than what I am getting, and I go to my superior and say, I'm doing the same hours, I'm doing the same work, why can't I get paid? Then I will be able to stress because the other person is getting. But if the other person is not getting, and I say because I am a more efficient worker and I want more salary, then I will have to put something further to get that. So the empowerment is not just about being able to stand up for something because I want something. The empowerment is about finding the potential, finding the behavior pattern, finding what is possible, what is the expectancy, and what is the psychological situation. In most of the disputes, it's a psychological expectation. So what we have to understand in all this is that empowerment is, first we have to understand that I need something or I will be comfortable in this. The woman has to first find out what is the space in which she is living, whether she feels threatened at work or in the domestic front. She has to find out whether she will be able to survive in that, whether she wants, whether her wants are being understood or not, whether she has put it forward. So, what do we really understand in this is that though reciprocity is what is meant in mediation, what we have to understand is that there is a certain kind of control that the person has to take. Unless the person is able to, as Sheena Iyengar was saying, unless the person is able to take control of the potential, understand and identify what are the priorities, understand how this can be dealt with. So the maintenance part is how to be dealt with. First is identifying the potential, then identifying how it can be done, and then to do the act appropriately. So mere confrontation alone will not help, or raising a flag to say, okay, I'm going to strike and I'm going to sit outside till I get this. That is not going to help at all. So we need to understand that basically the change has to come from inside. The change will occur, the trajectory of change itself will be first recognizing, then there must be some sort of a resilience. Once you recognize that you have the potential, then there must be a resilience for change. I must have the potential to believe that I have to change. Then if I decide that I want to change, then what do? I take responsibility for that. So I must take ownership over whatever the problem is. I must understand what can be done in that particular situation. What will be the consequences of a particular act? And then if I understand that, so we move from recognition to resilience to taking responsibility. Then all these things, when we have crossed, what happens is we come to doing the right thing, that is regeneration. So the whole thing can change. The regeneration can happen only when the first recognition happens. Until I understand that my life is my own and will have to deal with it, nobody else can help me out, or I cannot blame anyone. Because the first thing that happens in any conflict for a woman is that because we all always want to justify. The first thing we do is we blame the other person. We start calling names, and then we claim that I'm entitled to this, I've not been given this. It may be true, but you may have to do it in a particular way. You will have to do it only in a way that the other person will be able to understand that language. That is why they say voice is not just about communication. Voice is about the right thing said at the right time. You must be able to know when to put it, how to put it, and how to get things done. And if the woman still thinks that she is, her life will only be like this, or she has to adapt. See, generally, I don't like this word actually. They say, no, you have to adjust. You will have to accept that this is how it is done here. We see that in a lot of situations, be it between women and, whatever happens in a woman's life, or whatever happens in any situation in life. People say, oh, this is what will happen, you will have to adjust. In India, this is how it is done. But why? Why do we have to adjust when we know that there is another way possible? how do we look at it? We don't, because a change is such a difficult thing. We are very we are conscious that it is a very uncertain possibility, and because of that consciousness, we don't want to attempt that change itself. So why should we attempt that change? Only because our self-esteem, our self-image deems that we live our life as we ought to. So, as I said in the beginning, this empowerment is not just about the woman gaining power to do something, or a woman's group or an NGO doing something for women's empowerment. It is about the woman who already has the potential to just recognize. And at the risk of repeating, I would like to say, repeat Max Weber's statement on power. It is the ability of the individual in a social relationship to affect the actions, ideas of others despite resistance. So the husband or the employer may have resistance, but it is up to us to explain and to put forward why it doesn't work for that person, why a different change is necessary, or why a different circumstance will make it better for that person. And once we do that, respect will come for that person. For example, there was a matter, of course, it was not in mediation, but this woman had come to me for her third, I mean, the husband had filed the third divorce petition. Twice he had filed and he'd withdrawn the petition. The third petition was filed when the child was about 9 years. And he had come, and when I asked her, she said, this is what he does every time. And then he goes off to some country and he forgets it. Then he comes back. But from the beginning, I was abused so badly that even when I was cooking, I used to be looking over my shoulder because he would come and hit me from behind my back. And when I was pregnant, he kicked me around, and all sorts of abuse has happened. So he came from an ordinary background where his father was just a railway guard and he had gone to Harvard. He was very good. He was in his work and all that, he was very good. But the problem was with him was he was not able to align his life with whatever had happened in his past and what was his future. So he had problems with dealing with his own personality. And when I asked her, because this has been happening and she had hardly lived with him for more than 7 years, I asked her. Then she said, no, my son says he wants a father, so I won't give up. So these are moral issues on which we can't say anything. So we were talking about it. And once he came and said, how do I know that you would be a proper wife? So unless you come and live with me, I will not be able to accept you. So then she came back to me because I said, you have filed for restitution. He has filed for divorce. Now, what the heck? He is asking you to live with his parents. Go and try it and see whether you can live there. But first, go for some counseling. Learn how to handle him. So she went to this counselor along with her son, and both of them got some techniques to handle this man. And so when he came and said, if anything, he got angry, he used to turn around and said, look, I'm going to divorce you, or I'm going to kick you out of the house. She said, okay, I'm ready for that. Earlier, she used to cry. Now, when she took it, he couldn't understand why she was doing that. And then they lived together after that. And he passed away recently. She called me to say that he passed away. But she said, except for a few glitches here and there, it was okay. Now, what happened to this woman? She understood that she had the strength to stare back. She understood that she could question him. Until then, she didn't understand that. So this is the potential that we have that I'm talking about. There was this other case that was in mediation where both of them came from ordinary backgrounds and they had met in a wedding and they got married. But unfortunately, he also had business and he made a lot of money and so became the president of the Rotary Club and all that in his place, some village, some small town. And she was from Chennai. So their lifestyles were also different. Now, he used to beat her up and verbally abuse her. Everything was happening. And he had an alcohol problem also. Her elder son was in engineering college at the time she walked out after many attempts. And she found that her family was also not prepared to support her. And she had the younger child who was just in first standard or something, very young child. So we went through various sittings and then finally they went to a psychologist also for counseling. And then that didn't work out and they came back. And at that point, the elder son said, I don't want to talk to you because you're not with my father. And I don't want to meet you at all. And he was in the college hostel and he was not studying well also at that time. So she came to me and asked me, what do I do? I said, no, look, you have to prioritize what you want to do. Now, this man says he loves you, but he doesn't know how to handle you. Now, you've gone to the psychologist and you've learned some tips. He doesn't want to cooperate for the counseling. So how do you think you're going to handle him? So she took some time to think about it, came back, and then she said, no, my elder son is important to me. He's not talking to me at all. I will go back. But now I'm going to tell him that if he comes back to the house after 9:30, I'm going to lock up the door. He can go and sleep with his parents. If he does this, so she had one whole list. So then I said, okay, then if you think about it, and if you're still sure you want to go back, you do that. So she took a week to think about it. Both of them came back, and actually in the mediation center, both of them came and gave me a sari and some sweets and all that. And I said, I can't take it because I'm a mediator. But because both of them said, you're like my mother, which happens a lot of time because of my gray hair. So they said, and I said, okay, give the sweets to everyone in the center, and I'll keep the sari. And after 1 year, if you tell me that you've been able to live with them and you're happy, then I'll wear it. And she called me after 1 year to say that she was managing. Of course, there were some small problems, but the family got back together and they were able to live. So this empowerment of that woman, see, again, it was not as if she had walked out. She didn't have any qualification. She didn't have a job. She couldn't have managed. And she was very fond of her children. And the children also cared for her. It was a situation where their lifestyle had changed and she had different values and he had different values and they could not get along. Now, this, I cannot question her decision, but she made that out of her own choice because she took control over whatever was possible. And then she decided this was how I'm going. And these are the terms. She listed out certain guidelines which he was prepared to follow. Of course, he did slip up once or twice, but then because he loved her, he was prepared to do it. So these things made me realize that sometimes it's not for us to challenge their values or to find what would be appropriate or say this is the right thing for a woman to do. It is for the woman to find out her own power, to find her space, and to voice out what she wants, and to find how she could live in peace or she could live with a clear conscience at least that she had lived her life to her full potential. So these were the basic ideas that I wanted to share because I find that negotiation for a woman is really difficult because generally mediators also tend to say, why you're wasting your time and money in court? Why don't you accept something? Which I don't agree with, but that is what happens most of the time. And I think a woman is shortchanged at times because of that. But if she is able to understand what she's giving up or why she's giving up, and she is prepared to give up, that's a different context. But if she understands the context and if she understands the potential and she is able to put forward why she's entitled to a certain thing and she's able to get it, I think that is empowerment. Thank you. So any questions
Hi, madam. Thank you so much for your talk and for sharing your experiences with us. We do have a few questions and I'll be reading them out for you. So one is regarding intergender conflict among women with respect to empowerment. Ms. Mohana Narayanan states that when a father forces a girl to stay in a marriage openly, stating that he did not want a divorcee in his family, knowing there were several problems with the boy, empowering the girl to fend for herself and move out is the only option. But what saddens me is the fact that the mother also says the father is right. Can't a woman understand her as a woman, not even as her daughter? Where is the Shakti in that?
That is the unfortunate point. As I said earlier, it is not just about men treating women, not equally. I mean, what is this word equal? We don't need to be treated equal. We are equal or more than equal. What we have to understand is that we can, so from the beginning, it is for the woman to understand, to get educated, to find out her own place. She need not get an affirmation from her parents or anybody in society for that. She has to understand, yes, if the parents support her, it is good. But unfortunately, the parents again would be bound by the social conditioning. What would my family think of me? What would my elders think of me? What would the society think of my daughter who is a divorcee? Or for all you know, they may have spent everything on the wedding and they can't afford to have the daughter back. That could also be there. So there are so many things that happen. See, I remember that there was one woman who came back from Korea who was very badly abused. And she came and said, apparently she told her father, can you just afford to give me curd rice? Then I will walk out of the marriage. So her father said, why? Because he thought she was very happy there. And she had been driven out of the house in the middle of the night and all that in Korea. And she said, no, I'm not able to take it. I put up with it for as long as I want. But When she came back, her 92-year-old grandmother apparently told her, if you're not happy, don't stay in the marriage. Walk out. So I think it's, again, perspectives. Whether it is a man or a woman, it is perspectives and care. That is why I said, for a man, it is justice related. For a woman, it is care related. A woman has to care.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another question from Ms. Sangeeta Mehrotra. She asks whether she says, does empowerment not mean changing ratio, staying within the marriage or workplace?
Why do you say empowerment is changing the ratio? When we say, okay, let's say even in a workplace, the woman feels that she's not being treated properly. So does it mean she is accepting that the other person, whether male or female, has a higher authority over her? Now, what is this authority that we are thinking of? Let's take the word authority. Generally, we think authority is somebody who is higher up or somebody who has a say in something. So we are able to rationalize that. Or it could be a traditional thing also. The grandfather decides whatever is in the joint family, or the MD will decide whatever is in the company. So authority is something that we have rationalized in a situation, or we think it's traditional, or sometimes because of great leaders or role models that we have, we think that person is there. So always it is this power that we're talking about. Again, it's a reward power. We either want to relate it to something that we will get, or because we are obliged because of this role model, or because we owe something, some sort of reciprocation to somebody. So this power dynamics will not change once we have recognized. What we have to recognize is, I have the potential and now I must know how to deal with it. That is why I said we should not be confrontational. We should understand how to deal with it, how to use that power. And that is where the life skills come.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another question from Mr. Bharat Kumar Mehta. It's more of an observation, which states that, is there any relationship between two individuals living together in complete harmony in reality, having no conflicts? So I think having no conflicts itself is quite ideal, but
how can there be no conflict at all? Because even when you're siblings, you will have different views. And so when two different people come into the same space, definitely they were either about food or about lifestyles or something they will have, but you could be avoiding or accommodating them. There will be a difference, but you either could be accommodating. But what will happen is, most of the time we tend to say it's an ego issue. Now, what is this ego issue? Because everyone thinks that ego means somebody thinks they have a right to do this. No, ego again is, we try to attribute it to ego, but it could be because we have also given them that idea that they could take over. See, when I say rational authority, if I have given the impression to my spouse, say, that he could make all the decisions, even when we go out for dinner, I let him choose the menu that day. And this has been going on for 10 years. In the 11th year, if I question, he's going to understand he's going to think, where is it coming from? But in all these 10 years, does that mean there is no conflict? I may not like the food that he ordered, but I'm eating it because I think my husband has ordered it and I have to obey him. So that is why I said this obeying, voluntarily accepting that situation is all a conditioning. We have to understand that that is not our natural behavior. See, the problem is, a woman goes into a man's house when she gets married. The man does not come to a woman's house. So they always think it is the woman who has to adapt, the woman who has to adjust, the woman who has to change. So even when they are educated, they are in well-placed jobs, and they are living on their own in a nucleus family, the man still tends to think, I am the man, I can put up my feet and rest at the end of the day, whereas you have to go and cook dinner. So why? Ask him, why not share some of the errands? Why not do something? So unless you ask, he's not going to understand. So that is why I'm saying the woman has to understand the potential. She everywhere, the Toyota's 5 whys for any negotiation. You have to ask why. But it should not be confrontational. You have to prioritize. You have to find out when is the best time, and then find out how to put it.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one more question from Mr. Bharat Kumar Mehta. He states that in a matrimonial relationship between two individuals, if both are on crossroads due to their ego issues, What is the solution if both are equally adamant to budge even an inch, almost on parallel lines? Is there any possibility for them to live under the same roof, even if reconciled?
I don't know, because it depends on each person. So depends on how much of adaptability that person has. But I do know of a family where they had 4 children, and he was GM of a particular bank. I know. Then they had not been speaking to each other for over 25 years, and they were living under the same roof, all because they had children and because the society deemed it fit for them to live together. It went to the extent that when their elder son, he refused to marry, the other 3 were married. And the elder son had gone to the terrace to get something and accidentally fell down from the terrace and died at 11 o'clock in the morning, and nobody knew about it till 5 o'clock in the evening, because each one was not talking to the others. And I don't think that is living under the same roof. So if for the sake of society they were living under the same roof, that is not there. So we have to understand that people do make the choice of living under, maybe because it's a large enough property, say they don't have to see each other, and they want to live in that particular place because of the status or because of various things. They could live there. For example, if I have time, I just like to talk about one particular case. It was not in mediation, but this woman came from a fairly well-to-do family from Tamil Nadu, got married into somebody in Bangalore from a very rich family, like they owned most of Racecourse Road and all that kind of a family. And she was there, but her husband, again, as the eldest son, was an alcoholic and a womanizer, didn't do anything. But she told me that when she was 16, she got married, and her education continued only because of her husband. Now, the husband lost most of the properties, naturally, because of his ways. And there was a lot of litigation also. All that was happening. And when this was going on, after her children were married and all that, she walked out of the house and she came to Chennai, and she was living here. And she wanted to file for maintenance at that time because her son was also exactly like the father, for whom she had built up a business actually. So she said, I had done everything for him, but now even he is behaving the same way. So I walked out. And she did that because she had borrowed just 2 lakhs from her brother who was in US. And she wanted to, and she had taken an insurance policy for that. And she said, in case I die, my brother's been made the nominee, he will get the amount. But I feel that I took that money to start my son's business, so he is bound to pay that. I had told him that, and he had agreed, but now he's not paying. So if he has to pay that, and for that she said, I want you to ask for 2,000 rupees a month as maintenance from him, so that he will make that payment of 2 lakhs. So we filed the case, and she was coming to court, and he was coming to court and pretending he wanted the mother back, he loved his mother back, and all that. And all the while, she didn't have any support. She was painting, she was doing odd, handcrafts, selling, and she was taking care of herself. That is what I call as empowerment. She was alone. Her daughter was here, but she didn't live with her daughter. She was alone. And she would come to court, and she would ask me whether she can drop me home when she couldn't afford anything. She was like that. And when I was talking, I asked her, why did you put up with all this? She said, see, I'm obliged to my husband because he helped me to educate. He helped me to learn to drive. He gave me a club life where I had friends. I was able to learn typing. I was able to learn English. I was able to do all these crafts and all. I learned only because of that. My husband comes from a background where it was accepted that the son could do this. I can understand that. But my son was not like that. I brought him up in a different way, but he's behaving like this. So I can't take this. In the midst of all this, her husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And because nobody could take care of him, they wanted her to go back. And she said, there was an outhouse in that property. She said, refurnish that outhouse with a small kitchen and a bedroom. I will come there and live there. And I will come during the day to take care of my husband. During the night, have a night nurse. And because he was supposed to die within a couple of months, she agreed to go. She said, and I asked her, she said, this is my moral obligation. All said and done, he's my husband, and there's nobody to take care of him, so I'll go. She went there. Unfortunately, the man lived for more than a year, and she took care of him, and he died. Now, she has problems with her son for the property because he's cheated her out of everything. But she has moved out and she's living separately. And she says, with whatever she got help from her brother and her daughter, she's able to, because now she's too old to do anything. She's living. But she told me when she called me a couple of months back, she said, I'm so sad that my son also turned out to be like this, but I'm happy that for the past few years, I have been able to live as who I am. And I think that is important. That is very important.
Very true, ma'am. There's one more question regarding why there is a need for further empowerment, because men exist because of women, and behind every successful man is a woman. So, what is the need for further empowerment?
That is why I said we don't need to be empowered. We are already powerful. We are Shakti. We have the potential in us. It's just that we don't realize. We have to recognize our potential. Each one has a potential in a different way. We need not live like the life of somebody else. We need not have the goals of somebody else. We need to identify what is good for us. That is our basic philosophy. See, what does dharma or karma say? It is karma is only accepting ownership over whatever we are doing. And what is dharma is the right way to live according to our potential. That's all. Basics. So if we go back to the basics, we understand that we cannot try to be another person. We have to be who we are. And as in the life that we lead as we are, we have to find out how best we can use whatever is the resources. Resources means it's not just the money, it's our environment, even maybe having a plant at home. Anything that you have.
Yes, ma'am. There's an observation from Miss Mohana Narayanan. She states that you also have families who take it personally because the girl believes in standing up for herself and does not want to be dependent on them and does not ask for help. The invisible glass ceiling that she shatters only pierces their sense of ego.
Yeah. Again, that is because we accept the notion that a woman should not do this. Now, what happens when a woman, like a child, a girl child, say, at the age of 9, demands something? And there is a boy also in the house. The boy maybe will get away with certain things, but the girl will not be able to get away with it, or she may not, her demands may not be because already the society is conditioned to think in a certain way. And I think to a certain extent, we women are also responsible. Like this mother she was talking about, who said that this daughter should not be supported. See, there are a lot of things that we are also conditioned to think. So we need to break that, whether it is a glass ceiling that is there or whether we have created that glass ceiling. We have to understand what we can do and we have to move forward. No one can help us. It is we who have to help ourselves. And why do we need help? Because we already have the potential and we can do it on our own. And that is why I'm saying we don't need to be empowered. We are already empowered. We just have to break the seal on that empowerment. That's all. Nothing more.
Yes, ma'am. There are a few questions regarding a woman mediator. So, one is with respect to whether women mediators are better than men mediators when it comes to conflicts based on emotions and management. And connected to this is another question, which states that, which asks why women prefer women mediators and whether they think women mediators will be a bit more sympathetic, even though mediation is all about neutrality, and the mediator is supposed to be independent and
Yeah.
try as far as possible not to let even unconscious biases affect them. So what are your views on this?
I wouldn't say that women are better or men are better. It depends on the personality. There are a lot of men mediators also whom I have seen who are very compassionate, who are very empathetic, who understand what is happening because it basically depends on what kind of personality they are. They may not, and there are many women mediators also who impose ideas on the parties and say, now how can you do it? Being a woman, how can you state this? All that could happen. So we can't generalize like that. It depends. That is why I'm saying mediators have to have that special quality to care, to connect. If they don't have that, if they don't have the patience to do that, then they cannot be a good mediator. Yeah, that is one thing. The other thing is that the second part of your question was about, uh, this compassion or this empathy that we talk about. Now, it's not as if the woman is endowed with some special skills, but the woman looks out for relationships. She wants to be connected always. See, why does a woman put up with an abusive marriage, let alone abusive marriage? Today, in live in relationships, why do people put up with the live in relationships where they are being abused? Why do they still stay there? For some reason, they feel that if they walk out of this relationship, they have not done enough, or they have been guilty of something, or they feel that the other people may find fault with them, or some sort of a view that is imposed on them because of the conditioning. They don't pause to understand who has to take responsibility for that situation. They don't pause to understand that that particular action can be challenged. See, what happens, there was this particular girl who was engaged to a man in England because he has hemophilia. And treatment is free in hemophilia. And they came here advertising for a girl who would take care of him. And they said they would, pay for her studies abroad. So she didn't have a mother. Her father was very poor. He agreed for this marriage. And when they said the marriage was fixed, they said we don't want anything. But before the marriage, they asked for certain things, and so the marriage proposal broke. And so there was a criminal complaint of breach of trust when this matter came for mediation. And this girl just asked me one question. She said, I had got very good marks, I had got a free seat for engineering. Why did my life become like this? I didn't ask for a marriage. Now, why did it become like that? When I asked the father, he said, I'm not able to handle her alone. And when I thought that they said they would take care of her, I agreed for this. And when I asked the boy, he said, no, my parents said they would fix somebody to take care of me. So I wasn't even bothered about it. Now, look at this woman. She didn't ask for any of this, but she's caught in the situation merely because everybody is moving her around like a pawn for their own reasons. So I made her, and the father told me that I had to sit with her the whole year through the night to see that she doesn't commit suicide because she was in such a bad state. So I had to talk to her and ask her what she said. I want to study further. I just want to do nothing else now. So I said, having spoken to me now, have you understood that you are not at fault? Everybody played a game around you. You didn't do anything actively about it. Now, what do you want to say about it? She said, yeah, I'm only challenging life. I said, no, don't challenge it. Just say this was something which had to happen. It happened. Now you can go ahead. Your education will be paid for and you go. Your father will take care of that. Don't worry. Ultimately, those people paid for her education. In the end of the mediation, we got all that done. But, at that point, the next day, the father came and told me this was the first night she slept through the night. And I thought that was empowerment for that woman. So sometimes you have to understand that that is where you're coming from. And it is not because others are imposing their views or their ideas on you.
Thank you, ma'am. There are a few comments with respect to the patriarchal system, and there's this whole idea of pati vrita that I've heard about, and I do know that people from more conservative families really believe in this idea, where some people who are a bit more, some people might not necessarily believe in, respecting, well, not respecting, but worshipping the husband or treating him as a god. And when a woman is, well, let's say, married into a family which believes in all these values,
Yeah.
and if it's a joint family, what are the roles of the other women in the family to either support her or somehow try and like resolve a situation? So let's say a mother, a daughter, and a daughter-in-law, or something like that.
I think, the other support from the other people is necessary. But honestly, I don't think that is going to help unless both the husband and wife, together understand what is their relationship and how she would like to be treated. See, I met this person who was in a very senior position in US and had come down here. And he's now in an old age home. And when I was talking to him, he said, Uma, people don't understand that I have different roles to play. I'm a son to my mother, a husband to my wife, a father to my children, and a brother to my siblings. So when there is a problem with my wife and my mother, I tell them, look, I am your son, I am your husband. So I would expect certain decorum to be kept. But other than that, I am prepared to talk to the other person about what are your demands. So he said, I made my role very clear. And after that, I did not have problems. This will not happen in every family. I know that. But what I'm saying is that the man also has to, because he is also part of why she's there or why she has to face this situation. See, it may be a woman who's coming from an ordinary family and then she goes into a very orthodox family and then she has to abide by their customs, which will be very difficult for her to accept. So then he has to understand that she has a particular lifestyle. Maybe she will not be able to party every day if she was used to it, but at least he could find some sort of an adjustment where she could find some life and the family would also accept. There are cases where people have married, interreligious marriages. And when I've asked them, they say, no, I got converted only because I will not be able to be part of that family in a religious function. So it's not a religious faith because of which they did, but because they wanted to be part of the family. I remember one of very senior persons I know, she she went to law school only very late in life, and she did her law. And when we were talking once, she said, it was because my husband allowed me to do law that I did law. So I said, coming from you, I'm wondering why you're making the statement. So she said, see, if my husband had said that I can't do law at that stage, then I would have had to walk out of the marriage because I wanted to study very badly. That means I would have had to make a choice. Then he made it easy for me by saying you could go. So feminism is not just about fighting for your rights, it's about making the other person understand. And I think that's where the whole thing of power or empowerment or this ego or whatever we call it, or what do we say, this relationship balancing, everything happens only when the parties concerned are able to understand that the needs of the other person.
There's one question from Mr. Shivkumar. He wants to know, would it be acceptable or desirable for a mediator to use the mediation process to empower women?
Hi, Shiv. I'm so happy that you asked. But I don't know whether the mediator has to empower the woman. Mediator must ensure that there is a balance of power. The mediator must know what kind of background this person comes, whether the person is able to articulate what she wants, whether the person is able to understand and make an informed decision. That part of it, yes, the mediator will play a role. But other than empowering, the mediator can't go and find out, enough a material that is not available during the mediation. Go outside and search for it and tell this person, no, you can go and file for maintenance, go and find out this document. All that you can't do. But then you can ask them to look at what is possible to get material so that they get a better deal in this. Talk to the lawyer separately to find out how they can help the party. All that can be done. But individually talking to the party and giving them advice, I'm sure you know that we can't do that. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another question. So, in your opinion, do you think pre-marriage counseling is of utmost importance? Because what often happens in India is that they see that getting their daughter married off, or their child's marriage is just a huge responsibility, and it's almost like the purpose for the parents' life for maybe like those few months or years, because that's like their main mission in life. But what they often fail to understand is they don't really inform their children about the practical realities as to how married life would be. They just plan and prepare for the wedding. And a lot of people my age as well, they tell me that they don't really want to be married. They just want to have a wedding day. So
Exactly.
do you think that pre-marriage counseling is made mandatory just to make sure people know what they're getting into?
I really don't know about there is pre-marriage counseling and a lot of people go for that, but I don't know whether it will work all the time because see, why were horoscopes looked at earlier? Because they believed that horoscopes matching would help to understand what kind of personality, whether they would be able to get along. Whether that helped, I don't know, but a lot of people were able to live together at least for various reasons. Now, we have crossed that stage of horoscope matching to come to where people meet and try to talk and find out whether they can live together, right? So, parents also give the opportunity for the respective children to meet and talk and all that. But how much of talk or how much of sharing of whatever the individual ideas are there, I have a big query on that. Ultimately, it's a question of adjustment. Although I don't want to use the word adjustment, it is accepting that the other person is different from you. And if you like this person so much, you explain why you want certain things, why you will accept certain things. See, for example, there was this couple who were both from IIT, met in IIT, married, and they had a child also. He had a very good business, and they ultimately fell apart. And the child was just in first class, was used to going to school only in an Audi, that kind of lifestyle they had. And they broke up. And when I asked, she said, we knew each other through college. We were taking drugs. That's how we became friends. And then ultimately we decided to get married. We got married. Then I found that on his business trips, he was going to Amsterdam and getting drugs and keeping it in the fridge. I didn't like that. See, so initially when they were in college and it was a group doing drugs just for the fun of it, it was okay. But when it became a part of life, she couldn't accept it. And so when she questioned him, or when she told him not to have these drugs at home and all that, he became abusive. And then she had to walk out. And that was when he refused to pay for anything. And the child also couldn't go to school. The child was going in an auto rickshaw at that time, from Audi to auto rickshaw. He didn't even understand what was happening. And he was not in a state to understand also. Now, in this case, they had gone for counseling before their marriage. Because at one point, he had insisted on the marriage and she had not. And then, because her family also had certain doubts, they had been suggested and they went for counseling. And apparently, they did talk to each other and they found that they could. Similarly, there was another case where they were in a living relationship where one of the senior psychologists here told me that she had advised them not to go together and get a child, but they married, they had a child. She was abusive. She had been sexually abused as a child, so she had a lot of problems psychologically. And she had thrown the child on the wall when he walked out of the marriage. So we don't know what will help. I think you take each day as it comes. You understand the other person's problems. At the end of the day, you're tired. The person must be able to understand that. If the end of the day you want to go out for a party, the other person must understand that. To that extent, you must be able to respect each other, respect the choices that you make. If you're not able to respect that, then there's no.
It's all about making sure that you voice your expectations as well, because you can't expect the other person, or if you're staying in the family, like the other people, to be able to read your mind. Yeah. So it's all about
exactly. See, that voice itself, we is when two things come together. So you have to bring them together, and that voice is not just about articulation. It is also recognition by the other person of what this person is. Both.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Shivkumar wants to know whether a mediator can deliver a lecture on women empowerment in mediation in a private session. Let's say if maybe the woman isn't feeling too good, or what are your thoughts on this, ma'am?
I still wouldn't do it when I'm doing that mediation. Maybe I would ask them whether they could go for counseling or some other help. Are they prepared to do that? Because in the family court, we have a special counselor who's a psychologist, and we usually refer when we find that they are not able to understand the possibilities of the situation. Sometimes, they not only because of their education, sometimes because of their inability to really understand the larger picture, they will not be able to make a decision. So going to the psychologist helps at that time. They understand. And see, sometimes the parents may have bought the dresses they wear, tell them when to go to school, when to come back, check their bags, check their phones, everything. So they've never taken responsibility for anything. And then when they get married, they're not able to deal with that interpersonal relationship. And then when it breaks, sometimes we may not be able to help them at that point. But if we say, would you like to go for counseling? And it's not just, uneducated. I have had doctors who are coming in, making statements like that. And then they go to the counselor, they're able to understand. Because the counselor is not there to give advice, but the counselor is able to help them to recognize what is happening to them. That way it helps.
Right.
I wouldn't really go into the question of advising or that way suggesting a counselor is okay, but really pointing out everything to them. I don't think that mediator can do that, because neutrality somewhere will get affected. And what is neutrality is another big question.
True, ma'am. And with respect to counseling, whether it's post-marriage or even pre-marriage counseling, do you think it's important for the families also to be involved in the process?
Very, very, very.
And there's one more observation, I think, from Mr. Bharat Kumar Mehta. Has too much independence financially aggravated and contributed in breakups of relationship?
That's the attribution that is made always. A woman is more educated now, she's making more money, so she's become more independent. I wouldn't say that. I would say that she has had an opportunity to voice what she feels, maybe. Yes, some of them have become dominant because of that. And again, that is why I said you have to understand what is your potential and you have to understand how you're going. I've been repeating it, ad nauseum because of that. So it's not a question of just going ahead and confronting that person to say, I have my rights. Now, what are these rights? Because generally we talk about justice and being fair. Both are different, although we use it in the same context. Justice is because of certain norms. Fairness is when I am treated, equally. Like that, if the daughter of the house is treated differently from the daughter-in-law, she could say this is not fair. So there are, it is totally contextual. But the woman has become, that is why I'm saying, the man takes a view because he thinks he's independent, he can voice what he says. But a woman still cautiously opens her mouth because of the relationship there. She's more concerned about the relationship, and there is an interdependence all said and done.
Right, ma'am. And Mr. S. Raman wants to know why or what is the reason for the rise in divorce cases over the years? I think there could be several reasons for this, but in your experience, what is usually one of the main reasons? There's another observation which talks about how oftentimes it's not just the couple that causes these conflicts, it's usually a case of a possessive mother versus a possessive wife. So, what are your views on this?
So, as I said, balancing the power there by the husband is one part of it. Yes, today the divorce courts at least in Chennai city, we have about 7 courts and they're all crowded. And everywhere it's become like that. One is because of the nuclear family where each child is given importance and the child thinks that what I want I get, so why can't I get when I go there? For example, recently I'm doing a custody mediation where this woman apparently told him in the first fight that they had, she said, my mother and my grandmother listened to me. Why are you not listening to me? So mother and grandfather are different from the husband, or whatever was the fight about. But still, you can't say that. They are all very well educated, but that's how she said that. And from there, their problem started. So sometimes my expectation in a marriage is much more. I want, again, as I said, there is an image of how a husband has to be. Now, what happens in a traditional marriage or even a marriage which a boy or a girl are looking out at? They are looking for someone who is educated, who is in a good job, who is able to give you some security. See, all said and done, even if a woman is in a well-paying job, she wants a husband to provide her with a good house and a good lifestyle. She can't get away from that. And she wants her parents to provide all the Kanjivaram saris and all the jewelry. There's no getting away from that also. So both these things are not in resonance with her individuality or her personality that she's trying to project. And they also accept that the parents can give a dowry or whatever the boy's family demands. I can never understand that. And that is part of it. So they say in the marriage, we gave this, why did you give this? You got into it because they were demanding and you are prepared to go there. And so they say, no, if you want a boy of this status, we have to give this. So that is the accepted norm, they think. No, it's not that. So what happens is most of the divorces, because of these expectations, the same thing from a man. A man looks at the woman that he's getting as a bargain or something, or somebody who will come in to fill in the space to take care of all the services that has to be done for him. And when he finds that she's not able to do it, he also has a problem. So he may have the image of his mother who was a housewife who had done everything, or he may have an image of a working woman mother who was able to balance the house and the home, whereas this woman is not able to do it. So he has a different image of how a wife should be. She has a different image of how a husband should be. And both clash because there is a societal image of what the husband and wife should be. So unless we are able to break those protocols and look at it in reality about what will work for me and to become we, this is not going to work. That's why there are a lot of divorces.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think these are all the. Oh, sorry. There's just one more observation. I was just about to end it. But Ms. Sudarshana Reddy states that a mediator only assists the negotiating parties for settlement, and the settlement is to happen by the willingness of the parties. Why specific empowerment?
Yeah, as I said, in the negotiation, a woman comes in knowing that she is going to, she's already been abused or she's not been given whatever she wants. And so she's hesitant and she feels that she may not get it. When she walks into the room, most of the time you see the woman walking in hesitantly. Most of the time you find that she is coming with such a downcast face and she's thinking that I'm not going to be hurt. See, when there was a sexual harassment of a 14-year-old son, which came to court by the father, and of course, we couldn't resolve it because the father had a lot of psychosis, which we couldn't deal with in the mediation. But when we finished the mediation, I sent it back to court. Both the parents were doctors actually. The woman came to me and said, Uma, thank you for listening to me and my son. Nobody has heard us out like this. And I'm thankful that we were able to express what was happening in our life. And even at that point, she said, I feel sad for my husband because he was abused by his teacher and he thinks this is the way to do it. I can understand why he's doing it, but I don't want this to happen to my son. So that is why I'm saying the whole thing depends on the situation, on how that person looks at the situation.
When you deal with such cases, I know it's sometimes very difficult to disconnect yourself and your emotions from the case. So when I deal with like divorce litigation or things like that, I'm able to manage to get that disconnect. But at the back of my head, I'm also like, I just want to be single. I don't want to get married. But what is your way of dealing with this? These cases, and how do you manage to get a proper disconnect and make sure that you don't
it's
get
very difficult. It's very difficult, as you say. So of course, I come home and talk about it at home for some time. I just let it out so that it gets out, and I'm able to switch off also once I come home. That's it. I mean, today in the digital space, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I've started mediations only now, but yes, especially when children are being abused and all that, or parents are fighting over the child or using the child to get their own way. Those are very troublesome matters, and you feel really sorry for them. Or when the parties are able to come to some sort of an arrangement, and you know that it's the respective council who is preventing them from coming into the arrangement. Like, for example, now, because of the recent amendments to right to property in the Hindu law, a lot of women are coming forward to fight, file cases for their share of the property. And it has spoiled a lot of relationships also. Whether it is right or not is a different I'll just leave you with this last example. There was this woman who was just an agricultural laborer, and apparently she had about 3 acres, and she sold 1.5 acres to get her daughter married. And this 1.5 acres, she and her son were living from whatever they could get out of this 1.5 acres. Now the woman is married to a person who is an alcoholic. She has 2 children, but then she decides to run off with somebody else. And then when this amendment came, this Tamil Nadu Amendment 89, so she filed earlier. She filed a suit for partition of the property. So this mother came and said, now why should I give her? Because I had only 3 acres and I sold that 1.5 acres to get her married, and I gave her all that they demanded. Now, even if she found that life was difficult for her and she was going away with somebody else, she need not have come and lived in the same street. She could have gone somewhere else. And because she was living there, her husband came and he beat me up so badly that I fell down and broke my hip. She was not even able to sit on the chair that day. And she said, even to clean myself, I need my son's help. And it's so difficult for me to get up and move about. And if she's asking for a share in this 1.5 acres, how is it valid? Or how can you say that she has a right to this? And I closed that mediation that day. And I said, it's not proper for me to. I mean, whatever the court decides is a different matter. But asking them to do something because they have to spend more money on the court or whatever was happening. And then, of course, I also realized the person with whom she had run away was a politician. And he was the one who had instigated her to do this. But then I realized that when we talk about rights, it's not just about rights, it's something more. And as I said, that is why women need to understand what are the relationships, but they need not give up everything because of the relationships. They have to forge those relationships, understand the value of the relationships, make the other person understand their value. And only then it is an empowerment or equality. Otherwise, you're just accommodating or obliging the other person.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this webinar. And I thank all of you for staying for so long. And thank you so much, ma'am, for staying on, because I think we've slightly exceeded the time. But thank you, because your examples and your insights have been very helpful. As a part of BIMAC, we'd like to wish everyone a very safe quarantine period. Even though restrictions have been lifted, please stay at home as far as possible. And I'd also like to announce that BIMAC has a new blog series that's on Facebook, as well as LinkedIn, Instagram, and on our website. It's just to promote awareness about ADR. It's called the A to Z of ADR series. So I urge everyone to please go have a look at it. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
have a pleasant evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Baimak. Yeah, thank you.